Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. The Tennessee Titans made it official over the weekend. Mike Borgonzi will replace Rand Carthon as the team's next general manager. Borgonzi has worked in the Chiefs front office since 2009, most recently as the assistant general manager. Conference championships are set in the NFL playoffs. The Kansas City Chiefs will host the Buffalo Bills in the AFC title game after Buffalo survived Sunday night at home in the snow, a 27-25 win over Baltimore. And in the NFC, the Commanders upset the top-seeded Lions Saturday, 45-31. Jayden Daniels becomes the sixth rookie quarterback in league history to advance to a conference championship. Washington will visit the Eagles, who held off the Rams Sunday afternoon in a 28-22 win. The 2024 college football season ends tonight. The national championship game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Ohio State and Notre Dame kicking off at 6:30 on ESPN. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors, 615-737-1045. If you want to get in on the conversation, as you can see, if you're on YouTube or Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook Live, wherever you watch us on the F&M Bank chat on Zone TV, across from me, maybe Jackson will remember that this guy's the first time he's been on radio. We need to turn his microphone on for him. There we go.
There we go.
This is Stoney Keeley filling in for Blaine Bishop, who is out today. He's on vacation, taking a day off, so tomorrow Blaine Bishop will be back. But Stoney Keeley, for those that possibly know, Football and Other F Words, frequent guest on there. Big time that we really bonded over the Senior Bowl, which starts next Monday. We'll be down in Mobile. I'll be down there making sure, that you guys are all caught up in everything that is going down in the Senior Bowl and such. But tell everybody where you're from, what you're up to, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I'm Stoney Keeley. I'm usually in the F&M Bank chat, spamming the comments with everybody. Today, I'm here sitting in the chair, filling in for the great Blaine Bishop. I just wanted to let people know that I did actually work in this stuff. I do write and podcast about the Tennessee Titans. Y'all didn't just pick some random member of the F&M Bank chat to get to come on and host the show today or be on the show today. So SoBrosNetwork.com. I'm the EIC. I've been doing this for about 11 years now. Football and Other F Words. You are kind enough to have me on just about every week on that program. StackingTheInbox.com, covering the NFL draft and Tennessee Titans film breakdown, stuff like that. And just a general menace on Twitter too. So
there you go. You can follow him on Twitter at Stoney Keeley. And let's start with, and listen, today is the day. You guys have been blowing up the phones all week in the middle of a general manager search wanting to talk the draft.
Yeah.
And you guys did not give a crap about the general manager hiring search. I tried to make you care, but you just didn't care. And guess what? We're still going to talk about the general manager hiring and stuff like that. Some news from Albert Breer. But today is the day to light up the phone lines with all your draft questions, all your Senior Bowl questions. Stoney Keeley's here. We have worked the last two Senior Bowls together. We're going to work this third one here. So make sure, if you want to talk draft, if you want to talk Cam Ward and why Stoney thinks he's going to be a bust, I just threw it right out there. We're hot mic.
Doxing me on the air. My goodness. I've been saving that one.
Yeah, if you want to talk Shadur Sanders, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, and why he should play wide receiver and that cornerback, this is the time to ask those questions and all that kind of stuff. So, but the playoffs happen. And we got presented a defensive masterclass and an offensive masterclass. We got presented some really great memories and everything. But I want to start off with this idea that Lamar Jackson cannot be criticized and held responsible, because I think it's bull crap. Mm-hmm. Lamar Jackson put together a really good drive to put his team in position to win the game, to put his team in position to tie the game. And yes, Mark Andrews dropped and Mark Andrews fumbled. But Lamar Jackson fumbled and Lamar Jackson threw interceptions, and Todd Monken decided not to use Derrick Henry. This was a team effort in the loss on the offensive side of the ball, and it's Todd Monken, Lamar Jackson, and Mark Andrews. This is not just Mark Andrews.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. And we were talking about it before we came on the air here. Like, there were some really bad overthrows, some bad underthrows from Lamar Jackson, questionable play calls from Todd Monken, the drop from Mark Andrews, obviously. These kind of losses, you get to this point in the playoffs, it's hard to pin it on one person. But that's kind of the black and white concrete that people want to do. They want somebody to point the finger at. And the discourse has just been really weird about who's been at fault. It's like people don't want to just admit it was a collective group effort for the Ravens to lose that game.
I mean, every team that won the turnover battle won.
There you go.
And there were every team that lost turned the ball over at some point in time. It's just kind of crazy. Like, to me, I look at it, and he goes from one of the greatest quarterbacks in any metric in the regular season.
Yeah.
To a guy who does turnovers and touchdowns, never has had back-to-back good games in the playoffs, always fails at some point. And listen, Peyton Manning was the same way. So this isn't some kind of not. Peyton Manning was a notorious choker his first 7 years throughout his career. So this is not just a Lamar Jackson issue. This is tough. When you get into the NFL playoffs, it can be really tough, and you got to make sure that your quarterback, as a quarterback, you don't fumble and let a touchdown go. You don't throw a really bad head-scratching interception, and you got to make sure that you do enough to put your team in points and to succeed, not put them behind the 8 ball. And he put them behind the 8 ball. Now, he almost got them out. And that's awesome. But guess what? All great quarterbacks have that kind of drive. This isn't some like Lamar Jackson exclusive. Are we going to drill down the whole game to that final drive and forget everything else? Because that's not what you guys did for Will Levis. That's not what you guys have done before. So now we're doing it for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. And thank God the Ravens didn't win. Sorry, Bert, if you're listening, but screw the Ravens.
Yeah, I also... Man, I don't want to bring this up, but Ryan Tannehill in the Bengals game, I feel like that discourse was a little unfair to Ryan Tannehill. We're ignoring a lot of the other things that went wrong in that game. But I think another interesting layer to this Ravens-Bills game is just how the seeding shook down.
Yep.
It's like I still think these were probably the two best teams in the AFC, and people are kind of using this for the memes and the discourse on social media to say, like, oh, Lamar can't get out of the second round again. Well, the dominoes fell so that the two best teams in the AFC met in the second round of the playoffs, okay? It's not like the Baltimore Ravens screwed things up against the Houston Texans, okay? This is a good football team. These things happen in high-pressure, important football games, and I place a little more importance on this game as if it were the conference championship, because I do think the Bills, I think whoever would have won that game would go on to Kansas City next week and beat the Chiefs and go to the Super Bowl. But I think some of that nuance is being lost in the discussion the last 24 hours.
Yeah, I look at it like this as well, talking with Stoney Keeley about the NFL playoffs, is that home dogs bark louder.
Boom.
I mean, I told Jordan DeJaney last Wednesday, he said he was picking the Ravens, and I go, but you always got to keep in mind, home dogs bark louder, and they were home underdogs, and they really never should have been.
No.
Because first off, the elements, and I know everybody's like, well, Derrick Henry this, Derrick Henry that. This defense really didn't have anybody to be scared of in the passing game, which goes back to team building, right?
Yeah,
How many years are we going to sit here and talk about how the Baltimore Ravens don't have a true number one?
They keep trying.
They keep trying. Well, do they?
Well, I mean, they try somebody out there.
Yeah,
to be
Odell Beckham, I guess,
But Tylan Wallace.
But even the best GMs, Ozzie Newsome, I mean, it's been a long time since they've had it, but Ozzie Newsome, Eric DeCosta, down on the list. You look at these wide receivers, and Zay Flowers is good, but he's Calvin Ridley good. Like, he's a high-end wide receiver, too. Maybe even the best wide receiver, too. But even if he's out there, our defense is game planning for Zay Flowers? No. You have to have... This was the perfect opportunity for the Baltimore Ravens to not only get Derrick Henry, but to also spend money on a big-time wide receiver of some sort. Why didn't they ever go after Calvin Ridley? Like, could you even Calvin Ridley may not have to be game planned for here on the Tennessee Titans because it may be easier. But with the Baltimore Ravens, that would be so dynamic, and they just don't do it. And I don't understand. And that just goes to show you that even the best drafting player development franchises have some weird blind spot, and it's the wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens.
It feels like it's been that way for years with Baltimore too. It's like they're just going to go out and get Mark Andrews and be like, you know what, this is our guy. This is our number one pass catcher here. We don't need anything else, and we're built to run the ball. And I know people were saying like, oh, you can run on the Bills. This is not going to be a good matchup for them. But
TV announcers were going on and on about it. And all they brought up was like, well, these guys said that everybody's too small in this defense. And Matt Milano, I think he had the best game of any individual player throughout the whole weekend.
He's a bad man. He is a bad man. That was a great game. But people just kind of dismissed the fact that Baltimore might have to hit some explosives in this game to really win it. And there was a moment last night where I'm watching that game and I'm thinking Buffalo's about to pull away with this thing. Like this is crazy. They can't keep up, and it reflects what you're talking about, the ideology there. Why are they so averse to going and getting a true bona fide number one guy? And when they do try, it is guys like Rashad Bateman. I'm a bigger Zay Flowers fan, I think, than you are.
No, I love Zay Flowers, but he's not a wide receiver.
But I don't think he is. I think he's a guy that like you move around the formation to get matchups, and he's a tough runner. I think in terms of style, the way that he runs reminds me a lot of Steve Smith from the Carolina Panthers. Not as like dynamic deep, obviously, but I think you have that complementary piece, that prototypical Z receiver, if you will. But you don't really have the X to go with it. And I think that's what Baltimore's offense is missing.
Well, I mean, they think that Nelson Aguilar and Tylan Wallace is good for like one good big, catch in like breakout moments for whatever reason. But like that's who these guys rely on, and it doesn't work. Like Lamar Jackson can only do so much. Clearly, he is a top 3 quarterback in this league, top 4, whatever you have. He's at least top 5. But even he needs help in the passing game. Quit asking him to do so much.
Yeah.
And listen, they helped Josh Allen at one point with Stephon Diggs. Listen, right now it's Khalil Shakur, who I really liked coming out of college.
Yeah.
He's doing stuff for them that he's kind of turned into that yards after the catch, Amon-Ra, St. Brown style wide receiver for Josh Allen. Again, that he's not there yet, but he can be a Amon-Ra St. Brown style wide receiver 1.
Yeah. Well, they
don't have anybody like that, in my opinion.
Yeah, Buffalo's banking on Keon Coleman developing too.
Yeah, good luck on that.
The draft capital. Yeah, I know you're a fellow Keon Coleman hater. I think he's perfectly cast as like a wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside. But I don't know that he's going to be the guy. But they still find a way to kind of innovate in a way and work well with the pieces they have to sort of piecemeal together some sort of passing attack. And it's been effective. And a large part of that is because of Josh Allen. But from a team building standpoint, they're not outright ignoring the position the way it seems like Baltimore has done recently.
All right, when we come back, we're going to tell you why Jayden Daniels is a cautionary tale for the Tennessee Titans fan base. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons with Stoney Keeley filling in here on 104.5 The Zone.
For many of you who have lived here a long time, you already know Eurofix has been in Middle Tennessee area for your European car repair needs now for 26 years. And we've all gotten to watch them grow. And I don't know about you, but I love watching a hometown business take off. Well, we're now proud to announce the 5th location in Mount Juliet for Eurofix on Mount Juliet Road, right across the street from Dairy Queen. And Eurofix can serve you in Franklin, Hunted Oaks, Murfreesboro, Belmead, and now Mount Juliet. Pretty cool getting to watch a small town mechanic starting in the barn of his backyard of a single wide trailer and now grow to 5 locations repairing thousands of cars each month. And in Eurofix, you get a 3-year nationwide warranty and a free loaner car with every repair appointment. And all you have to do is just give them a call at 844-EUROFIX. That's right, 844-EUROFIX, or you can just visit them online at myEurofix.com. That's myEurofix.com. But always tell them Blaine says ya.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors, 615-737-1045. I call for draft questions, and we got no calls. Like, what is up? You guys just want to do whatever the opposite I ask you to do.
Yeah.
And I got Stoney Keeley here from Sobros Network Hot Read Podcast, and of course, you can hear him also on the Football and Other F Words podcast. And Jayden Daniels is having one of those once-in-a-generation kind of seasons.
Yeah.
In fact, it may be once-in-2 generations kind of season.
Well, now hold on, Zach.
Okay. Uh-oh.
Because C.J. Stroud supposedly had like the best rookie year ever last year. So how are we comparing Jayden Daniels to that?
Oh, it's not even close, in my opinion.
I'm just wondering.
Yeah. I thought what C.J. Stroud did was really good, but I don't think it was sustainable. This looks very sustainable if they are able to keep with their offensive coordinator.
I think the thing that encourages you about Jayden Daniels is that what you're seeing from him now are the flashes of brilliance that you saw when he was at LSU,
right,
despite being in Brian Kelly's offense that made it look like he didn't know what he was doing sometimes.
Yeah, and we saw it with Garrett Nussmeier, right?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Everybody was really high on Garrett Nussmeier in this LSU offense, and even he was way worse than what Jayden Daniels was. And it's because of I think it's because of the system, not necessarily the quarterback, which may bode well for Garrett Nussmeier, but he still has to take another step next year. But this idea, every time that Jayden Daniels farts gold out on the field, it doesn't matter what he's doing. Titans Twitter blows up and says, well, this is why you draft a quarterback in the first round. And I think that people forget, or at least don't care to remember, that Adam Peters did a really good job with constructing the roster. He did a really fantastic. He had one of your favorite drafts, so really both of our favorite drafts last year. He had all 9 play some games. All 9 of the draft picks play some games. Jordan McGee's is the only one that ended up having to go on IR, but he played how many games in your notes?
I didn't take a look at how many he played during the regular season. It was pretty early. I think it might have even been the preseason that he went to IR. And it's not just that most of the draft picks played, but most of the draft picks played the entire season. I mean, all like McCaffrey, Daniels, Sainristil, and Ben Sinnott, the tight end, all played in 17 games.
Right.
And then you had like Johnny Newton, who got hurt, but he still played in 16 games. And somebody else I'm not remembering, Brandon Coleman played in 16 games as well.
Starting left tackle. Starting left tackle. Only allowed 29 total pressures, but none of those were sacks. So
he's a stud. But
you can live with that.
He played in 16 games, started 12 of those. Even Javonte Jean-Baptiste, the pass rusher out of Notre Dame that they took in the 7th round, played in 12 games. That is production, like getting guys on the field right away.
So all this to say is that, yes, the Tennessee Titans need a quarterback, but you don't force a quarterback because Jayden Daniels is in the perfect offensive system with the perfect head coach, with the perfect GM at this time. Because we also thought the same thing about C.J. Stroud, and C.J. Stroud struggled mightily this year. A big drop-off. Now, his team was able to play in the crappy AFC South, so was able to get a playoff spot. But it wasn't a good offense. And it's a pretty bad offense enough to maybe Bobby Slowick's not going to keep his job.
That's crazy.
And I think he's only had one head coaching interview this cycle. Could be wrong. He may have had 2. But still, again, that is very interesting and telling. And what happens if Jayden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury takes a head coaching job somewhere? Where are we going to be at on Jayden Daniels?
Yeah, I don't know.
So that all comes back to, Stoney, this idea that because Jayden Daniels had this, and I agree with most of the people in the F&M Bank chat on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook Live, wherever you watch Zone TV, is that we don't really know. But if you're talking strictly about your evaluation of the prospects, where would you rank Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders in terms of last year's draft class?
So where I'm at right now, I think I would have them 7th and 8th. But like we've talked about before, I was a lot higher on Penix and Nix than a lot of people were. High on J.J. McCarthy as well. I think we get caught up in this searching for because last year was a great quarterback class because so many people went out and got their guy. That's what the Titans should do as well. And I don't really feel like it's fair because I think that looks in hindsight like one of the best quarterback classes we've seen in quite some time. So I think there are limitations with Cam Ward's game. I think his fearlessness is closer to recklessness. I think he's willing to throw into coverage no matter what it looks like. He's willing to throw off his back foot, across his body, off platform, altered arm angle, and sometimes it really gets him in trouble. I know that Iowa State is going viral. That Iowa State tape is going viral on Twitter right now. Every film guy is breaking that game down, saying this should be the first overall pick, but brother, you got to go back and watch like the Georgia Tech tape was not that great. The Duke tape was not that great, and those are pretty good defenses. So I'm kind of scared to death of the turnover issue. I think his weighted on-target percentage is not really that great. It's average, below average to the deep levels of the field. So I have my concerns about Cam Ward. I think what you're getting when you take him is a project that has the traits and raw tools that you can build upon if you're patient.
Let's go to the phones. Let's go to John, who wants to talk to these quarterbacks. John, you're on with Zach and Stoney.
Hey guys, how are y'all?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing good. I heard a lot of chatter about, in the comment sections and stuff too, about not knowing what you're getting. And one aspect of that I think that gets overlooked a lot of the time is if we look at Mariota and Levis, we took those because we needed one, and you can say you don't know what you're going to get. But we passed up on a lot of good prospects because we had to wait and see with those picks. We missed out if we hadn't taken Will Levis, we would have been squarely in the conversation for Nix, Penix, and who's the other one I'm missing there? Oh, McCarthy, right? We would have had that opportunity if we hadn't just swung on a quarterback, and now we're in that conversation. The same thing with Mahomes. If we hadn't taken Mariota, say we had just traded back, and we had waited until we really loved the prospect. So the idea of just we need a quarterback, we don't know what we're getting, spin the wheel, pick one, and then see what happens. To me, I hate tying up the next 3 years on that premise. I want to know that the GM that we're getting is looking at this prospect and says, hey, you know what? This is it. This is the best guy that's coming out over the next 3 years. We got to take him. If not, I don't want to be sitting there watching Mahomes and Nix and McCarthy and Penix passing us because we're sitting there trying to figure out what we got.
Thanks, John.
That's what I have to say. Yep.
So I kind of agree with all that kind of stuff. And listen, it's not really about what we feel about these prospects. It's how the Tennessee Titans feel.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, and if they have, this will always be my philosophy, every draft, and I know you agree with this too. If the team has conviction about a player and about a quarterback, go get your guy no matter what.
Yeah, and this is like talking about my reservations about Ward and Sanders. It's not to say that if they had come out last year, they wouldn't have been in the first round too. I mean, they might have been. We're talking about a historic class of quarterback, but
right.
I by and large agree with John's point there. And I would just like to add that there was somebody in this market that was saying, hey, maybe the Titans should kick the tires on Bo Nix, even with the pick that they had last year. And he's sitting in this chair, buddy.
Right. There you go. You were. And we also were big proponents of double dipping at tackle in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
And we're big T-Sweat guys, though, so we can't.
T-Sweat guys. We got some stuff right.
Yeah.
Is what you're getting at.
That's what I'm getting at. And look at it this way. I understand people are like, well, okay, Patrick Mahomes wasn't Patrick Mahomes when he was a prospect. That's true. But who was the last not Patrick Mahomes that was Patrick Mahomes, and where's your Andy Reid?
Excuse me?
You get what I'm saying?
Run that by me.
Like, I mean, everybody wants to use the outlier as the rule, the exception as the rule, and that's not how it works. But also, there is no Andy Reid here, and there right now is no vet for this guy to sit behind like Patrick Mahomes did.
Yeah.
Like, you have to have everything perfectly, and you're not going to find another Andy Reid out there. Cliff Kingsbury, I know that he's doing great stuff with Jayden Daniels, but he's not Andy Reid. This idea that they should have kicked the tires, I believe it was Buck that said this, that they should have kicked or shown more interest in Cliff Kingsbury when they were hiring Brian Callahan. Cliff Kingsbury's not a good head coach.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to go down that road with you.
Well,
I think he had a really rough situation in Arizona
that he created.
I think he did the best that he could.
Oh, well, if that's the best that he could with Kyler Murray, then I think we've seen enough.
I don't know. I don't want to say anything recklessly speculating here on the air, but I feel like the body language was off there. Kind of felt like he wanted out a little bit, and I think he's going to get a shot somewhere else one of these days.
And again, if the team has conviction, go get the quarterback. But don't go get the quarterback because you got a new stadium coming up. Don't get a good quarterback because the fans want a new quarterback.
Yeah.
Do it because you have conviction that he's going to work in your system. Because that's the other thing, because Brian Callahan may not even be here next year if this whole thing doesn't work out. And then your quarterback, no matter who you draft, Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, is going to have to learn likely an entirely new system.
So what's your comfort level like with these two quarterbacks? Is this something do you think the Titans have the people in place to develop and roll with these guys?
With Shedeur, yes.
Yeah.
Cam Ward presents that. To me, Shedeur Sanders' floor is higher.
Yeah.
Cam Ward's ceiling is higher.
Agree
but
wholeheartedly.
if you're so focused on the ceiling, you're not going to see how far up or how low your floor is, right?
Yeah. Well, and I
that's
feel
where
like
I'm at.
That's where you and I have talked about this before too, is how Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen have kind of ruined scouting quarterbacks for several seasons now, is that they've emboldened teams to take the guy that may have the physical gifts and the traits and the electric plays that are just, spotty all over their tape. They're wildly inconsistent. They look raw. You're going to have to teach them how to play quarterback.
And there's
a
lot of quarterback prospects that come out every year that look like that.
That look like that. And now you're seeing teams kind of taking those guys and it kind of feels like the bottom falling out a little bit with the Colts taking Anthony Richardson, another poster child for this idea of taking the traitsy guy and developing him. But I think now this is kind of a moment of truth. It's a fork in the road, if you will. If you're the Titans, do you continue that trend? Do you take the traitsy guy feeling like you can develop him? Or do you just acknowledge hey, maybe there's something to a high floor and a guy that we know is probably going to work with our system, and how that will elevate other aspects of the team, that's the route we go. And to me, that feels like the decision between these two quarterbacks.
And what happens if the head coach, who has his preferred system, has his preferred quarterback, and the GM and the shadow GM, Chad Brinker, they decide that they want Cam Ward. And then so you're saddling Cam Ward in a system that likely he does, not saying that he can't fit, it's a way worse fit.
Yeah.
So where does that, you just waste a year of a young man's career in all this situation, if that's how Brian Callahan feels like it. So what are you do? There's so much that goes into it. Again, for me, it all comes down to conviction from the staff mixed with the conviction less so from the GM. Because if the staff has the conviction of one of these quarterbacks, that's really where you should be going and leaning in this draft.
Yeah, for
is
sure.
The conviction of the people that are going to be with them day to day, not the people that are going to kind of come out with their sunglasses and visors and watch practice.
Mm-hmm.
The guys that are actually doing practice.
Yeah.
And that is kind of how I view it. Let's go to Reed, who wants to talk about the NFL draft. Reed, you're on with Stoney and Zach.
Hey, fellas, first-time caller, long-time listener. And my question today is, with fan morale at an all-time low and a new stadium on the horizon, can this front office afford not to draft a quarterback with the number one pick? Or do we go with talent and, Travis Hunter's, going to be the one, and maybe hold off and stink for another season until Arch Manning comes around? I'm going to hang up and listen to your answer. Thanks, fellas.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to tackle this situation. It depends on what they do in free agency, right? What they do in free agency is going to kind of signal. If they don't get a high-end vet, then they're pretty much signaling to the entire NFL they're drafting one of these two quarterbacks.
One would think.
Now, if they get a vet, they can at least hide their intentions. But there is an interesting scenario that I want to throw out there, is that it comes from, we brought it up a couple of times, but here's some tweets from Jonathan Joes. Matthew Stafford has a $4 million roster bonus in mid-March. Not that much. And his contract has been set up, though, as a will see for 2025 and beyond. The money doesn't create a hard deadline for a decision, but surely the Rams will want an idea of things 2 months from now. And so the reason I bring that up is because what if the Tennessee Titans trade for Matt Stafford, who Brian Callahan has a relationship with, and they bring him over here and they trade the number 1 overall pick, but get Matt Stafford, the Rams' first-round pick, the Rams' 2 third-round picks, and the Rams' first-round pick and second-round pick next year because they don't have a second-round pick this year. Is that, such a bad deal for your franchise and your team? I don't necessarily think so, but that is a possibility. You have Derek Carr, right? And then you have GM Dave Ziegler, right, who may be coming in as the assistant GM, who also has ties with Derek Carr. Mm-hmm. There is a situation here where it could be Derek Carr is on this, on this roster. I'm not saying that those are my preferred things. I'm kind of leaning just draft a quarterback in this draft class. I know it doesn't sound like that, but in this situation, there are other avenues besides just draft a quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. We didn't even talk about the potential free agents either, like Sam Darnold as well in that mix. I think philosophically speaking, to get in the head of the Titans organization, I wonder how they're looking at having that top overall pick as in terms of getting premium players at premium positions. Like if you look at Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders as premium player at their position, which quarterback is certainly a premium position, you have no qualms about taking them. But if the evals come through and you don't see them as elite at their position, which a lot of the NFL draft circles don't. I mean, they see them as like top 10 caliber picks in a class that doesn't have a whole lot of blue chip players. And when you talk about specific needs for the Tennessee Titans, Will Johnson may be a blue chip player in this class, but you're probably not going to take him at number 1 overall if you're the Titans, a cornerback out of Michigan. So it kind of narrows the field for me to they either think one of these quarterbacks is premium elite player at his position, or do you take the Abdul Carter, the edge rusher out of Penn State? Do you take the Travis Hunter, wide receiver or corner out of Colorado? Stockpile talent, get a difference maker, real premium player, and then address quarterback with a bridge option and maybe draft one of the developmental guys later in this round that seems to have what it takes from the neck up to come in here and compete right away. I think that's the question for me is like philosophically speaking, how bad do they want one of these blue chip players and to not sacrifice that, forgo that opportunity to take one just because you need a quarterback and lose out on that top pick.
Let's say that we get into combine and we hear of no rumors about teams wanting to trade up for the first overall pick. What does that tell you about the quarterback class?
It should tell you everything about the quarterback class. It should tell you that neither guy is probably deserving of that number 1 overall pick.
That's kind of what it is. Now listen, I look at it like this. I think we're both in where are you at on draft strategy with the first overall pick? Like rank them in your preferred method.
If they stick and pick at number 1 overall, my options would only be 4. And in this order, it would be Abdul Carter, Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to maybe it's just the highlights or the games and the intangibles, and I got to make sure that I don't do what I preach not to do, right?
Yeah.
But, man, Cam Ward sure is fun, especially when you watch these games over this last weekend.
Yeah.
But can those positive plays, because what everybody's got to remember is that his positive plays, his turnover-worthy play percentage is higher in college than what Mahomes and Allen was.
Yeah, it is.
And so if you're starting to look at that, I don't know how much higher. They actually may be pretty close. I'll have to double-check that. But when you start looking at that issue, the plays that didn't turn into turnovers because of some luck.
Yeah.
Are you going to get that in the NFL? Is that luck coming with you? Mm-hmm. Because that luck didn't hold for Will Levis.
No.
We saw that he had almost a similar turnover-worthy play percentage in 2024 as 2023. The only difference is that he became unlucky.
Yeah.
And that's what scares me, is that the plays that he did make, will they be able to be made at the NFL level? We'll talk more about the draft. We're going to get to Parker, Malika, Alex, and Cannon when we come back. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons. Got Stoney Keeley sitting in the chair next across from me on 104.5 The Zone. Always need some more cowbell here on Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop, Zach Lyons here, 105 The Zone. Powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors. Got Stoney Keeley sitting across from me. But we're going to go to the phones, and we're going to go to Malika first, who wants to talk about the draft. Malika, you're on with Blaine and Zach. And Stoney and Zach, sorry. That's a little...
Thanks for taking my call, guys. I love your show. Here's my thing. I want to get Shedeur Sanders, definitely. I also hope that some way he doesn't have to start playing right away. I think we should try maybe keep Mason Rudolph as the backup and develop Shedeur. But I hope in a year or two he can start being the starter. And hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, we will have an amazing quarterback. Tighten up, and I can't wait to talk after the draft. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. I'm just done with Will Levis. I think that's the nicest way to put it.
Yeah.
Is that I get everybody is there's going to be a lot of fans out there that love to want to keep Will Levis and still see promise. I just think his time here in Tennessee is done, and I don't get the sense that he's in their plans for the future.
Yeah, I don't either. And Malika, I'm with you. I'm all about Shedeur Sanders. If they come away from this draft and that's their guy, I think he can do it. I think he can be a good quarterback in this league. I think it'll elevate the Titans' offense. But I feel like Mason Rudolph is definitely going to be a last resort if they just can't find another bridge veteran quarterback. Because you talk about Will Levis and being done with him, and Levis was kind of rock bottom from quarterback play this season, but Mason Rudolph was better, but not much better. Like, they just need to completely overhaul the quarterback room. But I'm with her on the Shedeur Sanders love.
Yeah, Shedeur Sanders for sure. I'm all in on. I want him. I want both of them to sit on the bench. And I know that's a very unpopular opinion because it's like, well, if you draft them first overall, you have to play them. You have to play them.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't agree with that philosophy. I think what we've seen that the rare instances, they're instant hits. They lead to instant success and maybe sometimes sustained success, but we haven't really seen that with C.J. Stroud. But like if you guys want to compare them to Patrick Mahomes, then we need to treat them like they treated Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And let him work on stuff behind the scenes, learn the speed of the game. There's nothing wrong with that. To let a quarterback to try and get the most bang for your buck out of the first overall pick. Maybe long term, it's better for them to sit.
There you go.
But I understand that is not going to be a popular opinion. And by the time week 4 rolls around, everybody's going to be comfortable. Let them have the chance to win the job in competition. Don't give them the job. That's where I'm at. Because Jayden Daniels, he won the job. Bo Nix, he won the job.
Mm-hmm.
Let them win jobs. Don't anoint them right out of the gate.
Yeah, I would agree.
Let them prove it.
With Penix in Atlanta, too. They had a contingency plan. Kirk Cousins was there. It was his season. And until, things went really sideways there, I don't know that Penix was going to see the field this season.
Right. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it does. There is no tried and true quarterback way, but I think with these particular prospects, let them win it in camp. Because you know what? They gave it to Will Levis last year, or this past offseason, and you saw how that worked.
Yeah, for sure.
Wrong move, in my opinion.
Wrong move.
Let's go to Alex, who wants to talk the NFL draft. Alex, you're on with Blaine and Zach.
Hey, Zach, Stoney, thanks for taking my call. I have a question. Why does everybody assume that this upcoming draft, like these quarterbacks, I'm not saying this is a great QB class, but why does everybody assume that this is like the Geno Smith draft or something? Like,
oh, I'm with you.
Somebody on I think it was Albert Brewer, it might have been Nick Suss, I'm not for sure, but they said I think that like Borgonzi was in the same situation a few years ago when they had Alex Smith, but like those were two separate drafts. Like that quarterback class was bad. This one is not great, but it's not that bad. What do you think about that?
You got to listen to Football and Other Efforts, because we had that whole discussion last Wednesday about how this, because maybe I think last year's draft class has totally skewed how people view this draft class.
Yeah.
And it's like when Dane Brugler in his most recent mock draft had the Titans taking Cam Ward at number 1. Or no, I think it was a trade back. Either way, he said something to the effect of, this is not as good a quarterback class as last year's draft class. And everybody takes that to mean, well, this quarterback class sucks. And I will say I'm not going to call out who said this in a group chat, but I was in a group chat that said, if I can find it. Okay, so he's referencing the Albert Breer article where it says Borgonzi worked under new GM John Dorsey and the Chiefs had the number 1 pick. And instead of reaching for a quarterback, the Chiefs traded for Alex Smith, took a tackle, and waited for Patrick Mahomes a few years later, an outside-the-box strategy for the position that obviously has paid massive dividends. Well, first off, I hate how it's worded because they're not thinking that, in 5 years we're getting Patrick Mahomes. Have you seen this kid in high school? Okay.
Just going to chill on that.
And the guy who sent that said, I thought this was an interesting nugget. I said, not really. And he's like, well, just meant he's been a part of a draft with the first pick and they don't reach for a quarterback. I said, the Geno Smith draft, no quarterback went first round, not as big as flex as what we want to believe. And at that point, Borgonzi was actually on the pro side of things for the Kansas City Chiefs, not really on the scouting college side. So to me, it's like this draft class is not as bad as what everybody's making out to be. And I know people in the chat are misconstruing our words and acting like we hate all the quarterbacks and all that kind of stuff because they have no active listening skills, you'll come to find out, Stoney, throughout the day.
Thanks for the heads up.
But at the end of the day, I think this quarterback class, and I think we both have agreed and talked about this on Football and Other Efforts, wherever you get your Zone TV podcast, this is more like the Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, more like the Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, more common NFL drafts where there's 2 clear quarterbacks and everybody else. Yeah. That's the more common draft.
Well, and I also feel like there's not a particular gem in this class, like where the entire quarterback class is built around this one prospect. You think back to last year, Caleb Williams pretty unanimously the sought-after prize in the draft. The year before, Bryce Young, say what you will about what he's done since, but at the time, he was a pretty safely scouted, sure bet at quarterback. You remember all the hype around Trevor Lawrence. There's been like that one guy in each of the last classes. And that's where I think the parallel to the Mariota Winston class is on point because that's what it feels like we're doing with Ward and Sanders. I don't feel like either guy is established as that sought-after gem in this draft class where, just the scouting has just knocked everybody out of the park and they're the unanimous number 1. I think there's room for debate between these two. But I do think ultimately both should be first-round picks. Both should probably be top 10 picks.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I look at it like this is a very much, to me, a pick-your-flavor kind of draft.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so
absolutely.
Cam Ward is going to appeal to a bunch of people, and Shedeur won't. Yeah. Shedeur is going to appeal to a bunch of people, and Cam Ward won't. And I think there is a contingent out there that's like, screw both these quarterbacks, take the best overall player, and if you feel that's Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, a lot of people are going to be trade back. That's okay.
Yeah.
But that also goes to show you that more to your point, there isn't that clear-cut quarterback one. Because that clear-cut, even in the draft class of Trevor Lawrence, which I don't think was ever that good of a draft class that everybody touted for years and years and years, was that he was the clear-cut number 1 quarterback. Last year, Caleb Williams was the clear-cut number 1 quarterback. Now, was it because that we all knew that Chicago Bears were going to take him? Or is that because he really was the clear-cut number 1 quarterback?
Yeah.
So I look at these instances like neither of these guys aren't the clear-cut, but does not mean anything about their future success.
I also think this quarterback class, when I say this quarterback this quarterback class is weaker, I'm also looking at QB3 because there is a massive fall off after Ward and Sanders where it feels like you're taking some really big swings on either some traitsy guys that you're going to have to teach how to play quarterback or some really experienced guys that look like liabilities in the traits department. I'm talking about like Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, guys like that. And that's where I think, like, if you miss out on one of these top 2 guys, you are going to be swinging for the fences trying to take one of these other quarterbacks and hope that they can turn into something else, something more than they are right now.
Okay, when we come back, we're actually going to give you some positives about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders.
Sure.
Some things that I think.
Love to.
And one big thing that I do want to emphasize about Cam Ward specifically, but these two guys have something in common that no other Titans quarterback has had in a long time, in my opinion. So this is cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons. I got to get my name. This you being here just throws it all off.
Yeah.
Blaine Bishop, Zach Lyons here, 104.5 The Zone with Stoney Keeley sitting in for Blaine. Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone. Got Stoney Keeley of Sobros Network across from me, filling in for Blaine today, who's off today. 615-737-1045. We're answering all your draft questions. If you want to talk about why Will Campbell is for sure a guard and Kelvin Banks is too,
Let's do
this
it.
This is the show to call in on. But first, we're going to go to Cannon, who wants to talk about the NFL draft. Cannon, you're on with Blaine and Zach.
Hey, I appreciate y'all taking my call. I have a draft question about why is no one talking about taking Travis Hunter, who I feel like is going to be a bona fide star, and putting him on whichever the side of the ball you want, and then potentially using your second-round pick on a guy like Jackson Dart, who played in the hardest conference in college football and threw for 29 touchdowns and 6 picks and had a 70% completion rate this year. Why are people looking past him? I think he could potentially have a Bo Nix type of rise in the NFL if you were to use like a second-round draft pick on him. Just want y'all's thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Cannon. Not sure about using a second-round pick on Jackson Dart. A little rich, but I get what he's saying. And you're one of the few people in the market. So it's funny. So I do Titans Talk back, and Kevin Dyson, a wide receiver, says he's a corner.
Yeah.
Play him at corner, put in a little bit at wide receiver. He could be your 5th or 6th wide receiver, but play him at corner. He's an elite corner. Blaine Bishop, who is a defensive back, says play him at wide receiver, not defensive back, and let him be your 5th or 6th defensive back. So it's funny how those two guys view the same prospects so differently and how they should be used. Blaine's reasoning is, I want him to have the ball in his hands, or have the chance to have the ball in his hands as much as possible. You also fall under the Travis Hunter wide receiver.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm with you if he's drafted to this team.
For sure.
But is that how you view him as a prospect overall?
I think scheme fit is going to be very important for Travis Hunter, because he looks like a guy that if you're going to play him at corner, you better run a lot of zone, not a lot of man, which is why I think if the Titans were to draft him, they would stand to benefit by putting him at wide receiver, because we know in Denard Wilson's scheme, they like to play a lot of press man. They like to get up on the line of scrimmage, punch you before you can get into your route, that sort of thing. And from watching his tape, I haven't finished my tape study on Travis Hunter, but from where I'm at right now, I think he lacks a little bit of the physicality to play like true press man, one-on-one corner in the NFL. I think more experienced.
Blaine speak to his broad shoulders. He doesn't have, like, with L'Jarius Sneed, who's skinny, he still has broad shoulders.
Yeah.
With Hunter, he's like, he doesn't have those broad shoulders.
It's the frame, yeah. And it just, like, I could just see somebody like Devontae Adams, the ex-receiver, just eating Travis Hunter's lunch in a press man situation. So I think there are some scheme limitations. Meanwhile, I watched the wide receiver tape, and I understand why people say he's not a very refined route runner. But to me, like, he looks like Jamar Chase, like that prototypical Z receiver that you can move around the formation, use in different gadgety ways. A guy, to Blaine's point, you just want to get the ball in his hands, get him into the open field, because I do think he probably is the best athlete in this entire draft class. So you use him like that, you can manufacture big plays on offense. And I think that's where, if the Titans were to take him, he would be a better fit, is at wide receiver.
Especially for this team and the way it's currently made up.
But that's like what Cannon was getting at, was what I was talking about earlier, the philosophical side of what the Titans are going to do with this top overall pick. Do they want to take a Travis Hunter so that they can say, hey, we've got a premium position checked off the box, or check that box is checked. If we want to go in a different direction, we're not going to miss out on a blue chip player. And then you take the quarterback that you can develop. And as for Jackson Dart, I do think second round is a little too rich for my blood, but I see the skill set there. Like, he has some talent. That Ole Miss offense is a little wonky. Like, there's a lot of one read throws.
He'll be at the Senior Bowl, which we will be at. So we're going to see him in a more pro-friendly offense and see him go through his reads.
Yeah, and I do think that his deep ball kind of peters off a little bit before it gets to its target. There's some underthrows deep on his tape, but he is a guy, you beat me to it, Zach. The Senior Bowl is going to be everything for a guy like that. Can he be coached? Is he willing to apply the coaching techniques that they're instilling upon him, and can he do it against good competition down in Mobile?
So, Stoney, I want to talk a little bit more about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Do you find it odd that Cam Ward's not doing any All-Star games?
I do, because I thought for sure he would be a lock for the Senior Bowl, and the way the Shrine Bowl is coming with it this year. Like, I would have thought, man, if he doesn't get announced for Mobile, which now they have 7 quarterbacks technically on the roster, like, man, if that roster's full, like, there's no doubt he's going to be at the Shrine Bowl. But it kind of makes me wonder if this is a situation where, like, the agents get involved and they say, like, hey, man, your stock is super high right now. It's you and Shedeur, because we've heard some rumblings that Shedeur might not do some of the physical stuff down at the Shrine Bowl. So maybe he just didn't see a point in it. We've heard from people in the past where, you know, you're not going to do anything but hurt your stock if you go down there, and people start seeing some of these issues, like just wait for the pro day, wait for the combine, that sort of thing. I can't imagine that's the case with Cam Ward, though, because I do think the tape is good enough that, like, you would want him there to showcase what he can do. It's like you want him playing in the Pop-Tart Bowl because he can show what he can do. So
Best bowl in all of the bowl series.
Man, I tell you what,
roll.
And that tape, I know it was for a first half and he quit on his team and the Titans shouldn't draft him and all that stuff because of that game. But I told you before we went on the air today, that half against Iowa State is some of the best quarterback tape that I've ever watched. Just so much good. But to answer your question, yeah, I'm super surprised that he's not doing either of the All-Star games.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about what I like most about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, besides their physical gifts, right? I mean, Shedeur Sanders is sneaky athletic, but not like athletic in a Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen kind of way.
Yeah.
And he's got the accuracy, right? He's got the timing. He's got the ability to throw to every level of the field. Cam Ward, I mean, his tape is just a human highlight reel constantly. And we know that they have some cons too. But I want to get into what I think is the biggest thing about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. And this is what I look at. I do 2 things here. One, it's not really about comparing them to other quarterback classes, in my opinion. It's about comparing them to what you got on the roster.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders both have much higher floors than Will Levis as prospects when they were coming out in college. Of course, I was # never Levis throughout that draft off season.
Was too.
I was not. He was ranked even behind a injured Hendon Hooker, who didn't even get who wasn't even active for the playoff game. They went Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah.
But that's how low I was on Levis, and I'm much higher on Cam Ward than I'm here. And I do understand the rationale for the comparisons, but the big thing, then the biggest difference between Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders from Will Levis is that even temperament when chaos comes down on the pocket.
For sure.
That even temperament after they throw an interception. They are more like Matt Ryan, Matty Ice in his veins, silent assassins.
Oh, man.
Like that to me is where I put Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward from that kind of trait, in the sense that unlike everybody, a lot of these other prospects, like look at Caleb Williams. Okay,
yeah.
You guys want to know what I think is the biggest common theme between Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, and Jayden Daniels? Ice in the veins. Mm-hmm. Nothing phases them. They are locked in when the clock starts on the game on Sundays. Well, Saturdays for college football, but
I like that. I had to jot that down real quick. Matt Ryan as a comp for Shedeur Sanders might actually work. We might actually get somewhere with that one, buddy.
Yeah.
I like that. So for me, it is a feel thing.
Yeah.
And for Cam Ward, it's kind of different from Shedeur Sanders. I think Cam Ward does have a good feel for the pocket, sensing when the pressure is coming, when he needs to escape, when he's clear to throw again. Like there is
keeping the eyes downfield.
Keeping the eyes downfield, yeah. And I do like that about Cam Ward. I do think it is something that when I go back and look at my evaluation of Will Levis, what I said about him was that he operated on tape at Kentucky. I said this before he was with the Titans. He looked like he was operating about a half second behind everybody else on the field. And you don't get that sense with Cam Ward. For Shedeur Sanders, it's a different sort of feel. And I equate watching Shedeur Sanders tape to like reading a really good poem. He is poetry in motion. There is a beautiful marriage between Shedeur Sanders' brain. It's like the single firing of a synapse and his ability to get the ball where it needs to be. He also extends plays, not as dynamic of a threat as a runner in the open field as Cam Ward, but he is really shifty in navigating the pocket, keeping the play alive, and getting the ball out on time where it needs to be. To borrow comparisons from other sports, I would say Cam Ward is the potential home run hitter. Shedeur Sanders is the better point guard.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it, is that Shedeur Sanders, to me, is that what they've been looking for, right? It's about doing, to me, this is the biggest difference. This is why Shedeur Sanders is my quarterback one.
Yeah.
And it's pretty close, is that Brian Callahan has talked about that point guard mentality. Blaine Bishop, who usually sits in that chair, he'll be back tomorrow. He's talked about the point guard mentality. Mm-hmm. What you see the people doing in the NFL playoffs is a point guard mentality, distributing the ball quickly, always knowing where their outs are at.
Yeah.
That's what makes good quarterbacks successful. And I look at that situation and I'm like, that's what, for me, puts him above there, because I like having that guy that just knows where his outs are, who knows what the system is. And what has Brian Callahan talked about? Will Levis does the 20%, but 80% of quarterbacking is mundane. And I think what Shedeur Sanders does in that 80% of quarterback play is puts him above Cam Ward in that category, and it puts him on my quarterback one for currently.
And to tie this back to the Jayden Daniels conversation,
right,
people saying that is there a Jayden Daniels in this draft class and that sort of thing. I think one of the things that was underrated about him coming out of college was his propensity to take the check down, to take the safe throw, because people were so terrified of his deep ball that they would drop coverage down the field, and Jayden Daniels would see that and just chuck it down to the running back in the flat, and it would go for like 25, 30 yards. And I think that is an aspect of the game that people don't realize. You see the fireworks show with Jayden Daniels, but it's something that he's mastered as well, and it's important to play quarterback in the NFL.
It's always important to know that if you're first, and Jayden Daniels does this perfectly, and Malik Willis did it in Green Bay. If your first read's not open, get it to your safety valve. That's something that Will Levis could never do. But that's something that I think that Shedeur Sanders could do, and probably something that Cam Ward can do as well. He just didn't have to do it or wasn't asked to do it in college. So that remains to be seen. When we come back, we're going to take more of your phone calls, 615-737-1045. On the NFL draft or Senior Bowl. We're also going to talk about the stuff that has came out since last we all met about Mike Bergonzi and where he lands in the power hierarchy of the Tennessee Titans. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons with Stoney Keeley filling in here on 104.5 The Zone. No problems here on Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors. We have Stoney Keeley filling in. I don't know why I keep going into that. I don't know why I keep going into that, knowing that it's so hard for me to say back to back. But I keep going to the tongue twister. Sobros Network, Hot Read Podcast, Football and Other F Words, and of course, you can follow him on Twitter at Stoney Keeley. Thanks to all those that have started following him since being on the show. He greatly appreciates it.
Yeah, that's wild. I'm my Twitter's blowing up right now. People supporting me. So
they're just following you so they can come talk trash in your mentions.
Yeah, that's true. And I haven't gotten us kicked off the air yet.
There you go.
So that's good too.
There's still time. So we're going to go to Tristan real quick, who wants to talk about the NFL draft. Tristan, you're on with Stoney and Zach.
Thank you for taking my call. Okay, would you if these quarterbacks were coming out besides Shador and Cam Ward, would you take one of these options? Arch Manning, Sam Levitt, Dylan Raoul from Nebraska, Drew Aller, and Brad Johnston's son, Max Johnston from North Carolina.
And you're saying that if these guys were coming out, would we take one of those over Cam and Shador?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks, Tristan, for the call. What about you? I mean, Arch, I guess, is the only one that I know for sure that I would roll the dice on over Cam and Shador, but I still would say we haven't seen enough from any of these quarterbacks to make me put them. Honestly, honest assessment, I haven't seen enough to put either of these quarterbacks over the two that are currently here.
Well, and that's part of it too, is that there's going to be an entire season that's going to impact the evals we do. I mean, at one point, Spencer Rattler was a lock for the top overall pick in the draft. Sam Howell as well, and look how those prospects turned out. I will say I am a big Drew Aller fan, and I think there are some consistency issues that he needs to iron out with the decision-making technique. There's moments on his tape where he looks like a top 10 pick. And I'm a big fan of his. Happy to see him go back to Penn State, because I think if he gets a little more seasoning, I think he's going to be a lock for the top 10. I'm a big fan of Sam Levitt out of Arizona State. I think he's got some really good arm talent. I think he's, maybe been the beneficiary this season of some good skill position players around him, but I think he's a really good young quarterback to watch as well. I don't think Arch Manning's going to be in next year's quarterback class.
I don't either. I think he's going to be 2 years away from reports coming out from his own camp. Maybe something changes and they win the national title, and he looks awesome doing it. And that's not to even mention that he didn't even mention Nico, Garrett Nussmeier. I mean, quarterbacks in the future looking pretty good, but we don't know. Lenore Sellers, Malik Murphy. I really like Malik Murphy. And there's another guy whose name escapes me, but Kate Klubnik is another one.
Yeah.
So there's some really good, quarterbacks. But again, like you said, remember when Sam Howell was the next big thing? Remember when Spencer Rattler was the next big thing? The next big thing sometimes doesn't show up in the draft. Yeah. So I tell you the next big thing for the Tennessee Titans, and that's the Borg himself, Mike Bergonzi.
Big Borg.
Let Bergonzi barbecue, if you will. I prefer Borgonzed. I brought that up on Twitter. If he doesn't I put that on Twitter a couple of days ago. If he doesn't hang up the phone and look at the room and say, after a trade, they just got Borgonzed. What are we even doing here?
Yeah, I told you he's got to have a gavel too.
Yeah.
Just smack it. You've just been Borgonzed. Boom.
The Borgonzi scheme, if it kind of goes in with the Chad Brinker and what people think about that whole situation, firing Rand Carthon. The Borgonzi scheme maybe was the thing. What do you got, Jackson?
What do you guys think about the great and powerful Gons?
That's too much. You got to understand nickname. It's good in theory.
Yeah.
But you got to understand nicknames it's got to be short. It's got to be short. All right. So this morning, Albert Breer drops an article and drops some pretty big things in the article. What I think is interesting is that first, let's get to the interesting stuff before we get to the real juice of it. They've known each other since they got out on the road, I assume as scouts back in 2009, and have known each other since. They became the point men for the Snead and D-Hop trades. So take that as you will, because there's a lot of people that think the Tennessee Titans got fleeced, and the man that fleeced you is coming into the building. So there you go.
Well, they learned from their mistake. They're like, oh, he got us.
Yeah.
We got to get him in our room now.
We got Burgons, and we are not going to be Burgonsed in 2025.
We're going to do the Borgonzi.
Yeah, we are now the Burgonzers.
Yes.
There you
I
go.
like it.
And then spent 45 minutes talking to Brett Veach, but also talked to people that worked under Borgonzi. But here's one key thing, and this will kind of get into our assistant general manager discussion later as well, is that Borgonzi knows and has embraced the Packers grading scale.
Yeah.
Which I think which in the thing means that they speak the same language, Brinker and Borgonzi, when it comes to doing the draft, when it comes to scouting process, when it comes to grade and processes and all that kind of stuff. So I like that, but I'm not all bought in on this final thing. I'm going to have to hear it from the Tennessee Titans. And even then, the Tennessee Titans have proved not to be believed.
Yeah.
But it says Borgonzi will oversee coaching, scouting, sports medicine, sports performance, and player development, and have final say on the roster. Now, this is about a week and a half or 2 weeks removed from Burke Nighthill saying, well, final authority in all football things is Chad Brinker.
Yeah.
That he can break the ties, quotation mark, which means if you can break ties, you can veto, which means if you can veto, you have final say.
Yeah.
He's like the president, right? He gets a bill across his desk and he has veto power.
Exactly.
It's a little timely for inauguration day right there.
Brinker.
There you go. But I look at it and I go, I don't believe this. I mean, not in I'm shocked that Breer reported it. I don't believe that it's true.
Yeah.
Because if someone has final say, and listen, they said it. So now this needs to be clarified in the press conference that Terry McCormick says, barring any snags that prevent a deal being finalized, a press conference to introduce Mike Borgonzi as Titans GM is going to be tomorrow, Tuesday. Now, all this say, barring a deal being finalized, what if the way they got him to take the deal was to give him final say?
Yeah.
Which is a possibility, right? We heard all these weird tweets after he signed that, well, maybe it didn't happen. Maybe it did. We're waiting, no ink to paper and all this kind of stuff. Like, okay, so maybe he did get final say. But that's what we need to find out at the press conference. I'm not taking one man's report from Albert Breer and treating it as fact. And really, we got to hear from everybody on the press conference.
So your insinuation here is that maybe the final say has shifted from the initial talks after Rand Carthon's firing, where it was Chad Brinker, that to now, fast forward a week, Mike Borgonzi has the final say, and perhaps that was a part of him signing the deal.
I mean, it's hard for me to believe that now, listen, we already knew based on the job description that Chad Brinker put out there at PK.com, put it out in the Titans.com. The new GM is going to oversee the personnel.
Yeah.
He's going to oversee the coaching staff. Breer even says, Callahan reports to Borgonzi, Borgonzi reports to Brinker.
Yeah.
None of what anybody has said, because they've never really said roster control. I've even tried to go find something that says them saying roster control. They've used roster control in terms of the GM job last year. That's a guy that had final say, though. Now, who has final say? Now, overseeing the roster and roster control doesn't really mean the same thing. If you still have to write down, if you pass the bill, you and Brian Callahan come to a decision and you have to take it to Chad Brinker for him to approve, you don't have final say.
Yeah.
You don't have roster control. It has to be approved by someone. So I have to see it. I have to hear it from them at the press conference. Everybody no collaboration, no break ties, bull crap. Who has final say over the final 53?
Yeah.
When it comes down, is it still going to have, and it needs to be followed up with, if they say Borgonzi, does Mike Borgonzi have to get everything approved by the guy with final football authority? Because then we know that he doesn't really have final say.
Yeah, and I think the issue here is that the messaging has been a little inconsistent over the last couple of years, and it allows for questions like this to arise that I'm with you. Like, let's kind of clarify what's going on here. Let's define the roles pretty well so that we don't have these questions in the future. I do think it's interesting. A couple of the takeaways I had from this piece, it sounds like the Titans viewed him as the most complete candidate. And there's a quote from Breer in here that I think is particularly hopeful for Titans fans that see this hire and they think Kansas City Chiefs and they want to understand like how much of an impact he had on the build of that potential dynasty. The quote reads, "Every decision made over the past 8 seasons in Kansas City had his fingerprints on it." So
that was one of the things that they were looking for.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like from this piece, the takeaways from Albert Breer's piece, that they're going to let Mike Borgonzi be the general manager of the Tennessee Titans.
Well, I mean, that would be the more prudent thing to do, right? If you're truly going to be the guy that, I think it was called New Age stuff in the thing. If you're truly going to be the guy over the analytics and salary cap and let him focus on roster building, let him build the roster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Without your oversight, without you lumbering over and vetoing and all this kind of stuff. Let him do it.
Yeah.
Because you didn't allow the last GM to do it.
Let Borgonzi scheme.
Let Borgonzi scheme. Scheme up a good roster, if you will. So I look at it and I go, okay, what's the next step? Next step is getting an assistant general manager, and 2 names have been thrown out there. Albert Breer was the first guy to say, we got breaking news.
The Chicago Bears are hiring Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson as their next head coach.
I cannot wait to see how that works out.
I can't either.
Because I do not think there's anything remotely like Caleb Williams. Because the rumor was last week, and this was from Commanders Insider, so Ben Johnson to Chicago per Tom Pelissero, was that they turned the plane around, the Commanders did, Adam Peters and him, because he wanted to keep Sam Howell. So now he's going over to Caleb Williams, who is nothing like Jared Goff and what he's used to. So it'll be so interesting to see if he brings Tanner Engstrand over, who is the passing game coordinator for the Detroit Lions, whose defensive coordinator is. Will he call plays? How's it all going to work out when you don't have the world's best offensive line over in Chicago? There's a lot to that. And you have a GM that is kind of on maybe hot water, but that ownership structure is just as dysfunctional as what is perceived about Amy Adams Strunk and this whole situation over here. So it will be interesting to see how he works with a quarterback like Caleb Williams. Does he adapt the scheme to him, or does he force Caleb Williams to adapt to his scheme?
Yeah, I mean, it's a precision offense that they're running there in Detroit right now. And Jared Goff, for all of his warts, I've always been a big Jared Goff truther because I think his ball placement, his timing, his kind of feel in the pocket, he makes the stray bad decision every once in a while. I'll admit that. But those things kind of lead towards a precise passing attack. And Caleb Williams is about as off script as you can get. I mean, really creative as a freelancer, really good arm talent, that sort of thing. But it does kind of feel like this is going to be a significant shift for Ben Johnson. And I'm curious because he holds out on a head coaching gig last cycle. What is it about the Chicago job that it looks on the surface to guys like you and me like this is a square peg in a round hole with this quarterback? What is it about this job that he finds so appealing? I would be curious to hear.
Yeah, that will be very interesting. I'm sure he'll say, well, the chance to work with Caleb Williams or whatever, something like that. Sure. But you had a chance to work with Jayden Daniels and you turned it down. So
well, hey, Sam Howell Hive, stand up. Let's go.
Sam Howell, future backup. That means Tyson Bagent's gone. Sam Howell's coming over as a free agent. Do it. Man, Tyson Bagent, Tennessee Titans. There you go. We come really full circle with Senior Bowl stuff.
We're cooking there.
Speaking of Senior Bowl stuff, let's talk about the assistant general manager job before the breaking news that Ben Johnson's taken the head coaching job of Chicago Bears. Dave Ziegler is a name that has been popped around, former Raiders GM 2022-2023. If you want to know why he was fired, Dylan Parham, Zamir White, Neil Farrell, Matthew Butler, Thayer Munford, Britton Brown, Tyree Wilson, Michael Mayer, Byron Young, not the Byron Young you guys all know and love.
Well, didn't they draft the wrong Byron Young? Isn't that the story that's going viral right now?
I've totally missed it, but that would be hilarious if they did. Trey Tucker, Jacorian Bennett, Aiden O'Connell, Christopher Smith, Amari Burney, and Nesta Jade Silvera. That is why he got fired.
Yeah, that's
Those are two terrible draft classes on a whole.
I was a big fan of Parham. He was a guy at the Senior Bowl that I watched. I liked him quite a bit. I was kind of surprised to see him get so much play, but that might be one of those things that are indicative of where the Raiders are at right now.
Well, and that's why the Raiders are still picking in the top 12.
They're missing on draft picks, and they're playing these
They
guys
traded all that draft capital for Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
And all this kind of stuff. And that didn't, I mean, it worked out for Devontae Adams, but it didn't work out for the Raiders. And so I look at this situation, I'm just like, I don't want him anywhere near her. And he comes from the New England Patriots side of things, and he's very pro heavy. This team for assistant general manager needs a scout. And I'm talking the diehard scout. And that's why the three names on my list in order, and and the reason why the first name is up there first is because of the whole scouting language, the scouting process familiarity. And that's John Eric Sullivan, who can take an assistant general manager job. He's VP personnel over there at the Packers. The other one would be Terrence Gray. And then the last one, I think, is the one that Buck Rising brought up today. And it's very surprising, but when you really start diving into his background, it's not really that surprising. That's Jim Nagy from the executive director of the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want to talk about a scout. I mean, that man, just look at his work for the Senior Bowl, all the prep that you have to do to get the right people there. You're talking to all of the NFL organizations, scouts in every department. You're trying to figure out, who do these guys want to see? Who's good enough to make the cut here in Mobile? Like, there's a lot more scouting involved with that. And that's not even including his NFL experience either. So, qualified candidate.
And his experience all revolves around experience with both of these guys. He has distinct connections to Borgonzi and Brinker. 1996, he was a scouting intern with Green Bay. Way before Brinker's time, but he worked with John Schneider and Reggie McKenzie, who both have strong ties to the Green Bay organization, strong ties to Brinker. Reggie McKenzie obviously interviewed for the job here. He was a scout under then John Schneider, who is a fantastic evaluator of personnel talent, as well as an evaluator of player talent, but personnel talent. Brought him over to Washington in 2001. Then they went over to 2003 under Scott Pioli in New England, and then followed Pioli, who also has a very strong executive branch tree, if you want to look at it, into Kansas City the year that Borgonzi started. And then he went over in 2013 to go back to John Schneider over in Seattle. And then in 2018 became executive director of the Senior Bowl. And we get a lot of questions of why would Jim take this job? He's living life in Mobile. He's got this. Well, we know that he's interviewed for general manager jobs. An assistant, likely the reason why he's not getting those jobs. We'll talk about that when we come back after the break. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons. Got Stoney Keeley across from me on 104.5 The Zone. Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here at 105 The Zone, powered by all four-season garage doors, 615-737-1045. Thanks to everybody in the F&M Bank chat on Zone TV, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook Live for being so welcoming to Stoney Healy, who's in for Blaine for today. Blaine will be back tomorrow. So we were talking about Jim Nagy possibly being assistant general manager. And I just want to say that, like, that dude scouts. And he possibly hasn't gotten a true shot at a general manager job because the resume may be a little flimsy on all the other things a general manager has to do. They're coaching staffs and all this kind of stuff. And listen, he gets some experience with that, but not salary cap experience, not the day-to-day stuff that the NFL GMs have to go through. So maybe this is the next appropriate step so he can become a general manager, which is ultimately what he wants to do. Yeah. He wants to be a general manager. So that's where I'm at. I like Jim, but I like him. I like the other two guys a little bit more. But that's a really, again, much like and I'm not saying the other two are actually even in the conversation with the Tennessee Titans. Just saying that if I was creating a list, that would be my top 3.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I would be really curious to kind of tap into Jim's experience with the Senior Bowl, and I would be curious to know like what exactly his connections are all over the NFL, because like I said before, like you're communicating with all 32 teams and all scouting departments to figure out what people like, and over time you build those relationships. I would imagine that this gig, listen, I love Mobile, Alabama. I love going down and chatting it up all week, and it's football heaven. I would want an assistant GM job over living in Mobile, Alabama to run the Senior Bowl. But
you're killing hopefully our oyster shucker at Winsel's is
he doesn't remember us. He doesn't remember us. We went down last year.
Gave
He
him
didn't
a
even know
hat
who
and everything
we were.
our first year down there.
I know, but I understand why he wants the NFL job, but I think that there's been valuable experience added while he's been the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl.
Okay, real quick. Give me a under-the-radar player from the Senior Bowl you're excited to go watch this weekend, but also give us, regardless of position, the 2 best players that are down at the Senior Bowl.
I think Josh Connerly, the left tackle out of Oregon, is the best player down in Mobile next week. I think he's a hit-and-stick type of offensive tackle. If I were the Titans, I would be real curious to watch him, see if he could potentially switch to right tackle, because I do think there's a chance that he's available top of the second round. On defense, I like Nick Scorton, I think is how you pronounce it. I don't know.
We need a pronunciation guy. I was going through the inside linebacker prospect list, and I'm like, this is just going to blow up my computer typing some of these names.
The power rusher out of Texas A&M, I like him quite a bit. I think the offensive line, defensive line matchups down there are going to create an earthquake in Mobile, Alabama next week. Under the radar guys, I really like this David Walker out of Central Arkansas. The level of competition is going to be the question. He's an edge rusher. He made short work out of the offensive tackles at his level of competition, really robust skill set. And I like Mike Green a lot as well out of Marshall, another edge rusher that has the speed, the juice, the toolkit.
Nick Scourton was my guy that I thought was going to be the best player probably down there. But there are so many edge rushers. I'm so interested to hear your reports on who's getting the best of what, because, I mean, that's where those one-on-ones between the offensive line, that's when you really see, can someone handle a speed to power rusher? Can someone handle someone with bend? That is awesome to see. My under-the-radar prospect is safety from Western Kentucky, Upton Stout.
There we go.
I'm digging what I've seen from this guy so far.
I haven't watched him yet.
His big thing is he's 5'9", but put him back there at safety. You know, that can hide some of the issues that you may have with his size. But this dude is fearless. I love what I've seen. I mean, like, this dude, I think, is going to be a day 2 pick by the end of this. And I think we'll all be talking about some Upton Stout later on this week. So we'll be in Mobile, football and other efforts. I'll be down there. Stoney will join me as a guest and be 6 p.m. every night, starting with Monday through Saturday, 6 p.m. So it's going to be fun. We'll take your questions live on a lot of that. Ask us about some prospects. Monday will be our preview show, and then we'll just do day 1, day 2, day 3 reviews, and then a whole week matchup. And then we'll go live right after the game is over and the press box is cleared out. So 6 p.m. Monday through Friday and Saturday, about an hour after the game is over, we'll go live and tell you what we've seen, what we've heard, our final assessments, and all that kind of stuff. So you guys do not want to miss it. For most of the people know us based off our Senior Bowl coverage. It's can't miss opportunity. Remember, Puka Nacua, Tajay Spears had him on our radar first after the Senior Bowl and heading into the Senior Bowl, actually.
Tavondre Sweat.
So let's move to the national football game or national title game tonight, college football, just real quick. Two guys that I want everybody put on their radars. Again, two safeties, because safety is a need for the Tennessee Titans. Xavier Watts of the Notre Dame, and then, of course, Lathan Ransom of the of Ohio State. Those guys have been making plays. But also, I'm rooting for Notre Dame because I realized I just hated Brian Kelly this whole time.
That's been uncovered. The player that I would add to that is Ohio State wide receiver Emeka Egbuka.
Yep.
I think he's a guy that could potentially be in play there for the Titans in the second round if they're looking to add a playmaker to their offense. Really, really interesting jack of all trades kind of wide receiver that can do a little bit of everything. Might not necessarily have the traits you look for. He's not like the outright burner that separates down the field, but he would be a guy that you could plug into this offense, would be a pretty fun player.
Yep. Who are you rooting for, Ohio State or Notre Dame?
Man, I'm rooting for Notre Dame because the job that Marcus Freeman has done there has just been fantastic. And those dudes play hard for him. I know there's going to be a gap in talent between the two rosters, but Notre Dame is tough. And I would like to see them keep this one close tonight.
Of course, there's the two Jacks. You got Jack Kaiser, the linebacker for Notre Dame, then Jack Sawyer, who is the edge rusher, I guess, who probably will go inside. Will he be a true edge rusher? That'll be an interesting question to see.
Yeah, I don't know. The traits are a bit of a concern there as well, but leadership, experience, that sort of thing, he checks.
Will Howard, if the Tennessee Titans for some reason pass on a quarterback, Will Howard is a name to watch and keep an eye on.
I like
Kyle
Will
McCord
Howard.
is also going to be down at the Senior Bowl. I'm very interested in watching him and Jackson Dart. And all this. The Senior Bowl roster is stacked. I cannot wait to just dive in and watch these guys get coached, watch these guys make improvements throughout the week, who rises up to the occasion, and who shows out every day. And the draft starts in Mobile, and the draft starts here on 105 The Zone. How about that? A little phrase I coined and everything.
Love to hear it.
Stoney, I really appreciate you joining. Final words for the people. One last thing for the Tennessee Titans fans.
We didn't even talk about candles today. What's your favorite candle fragrance?
The one that you just got me for a couple months ago. It was blue. It smells like the ocean, I think.
Well, regardless,
I'm not a big candle guy. So.
Thank you for having me on today, Zach. It's an honor. I've listened to this radio station for the last, 16 years of my life. It's what made me want to do it. I'm happy to sit in this chair. I'm honored you have me. I'm thankful for everybody that's reached out and followed me on Twitter off of this. And see you Thursday night.
See you Thursday night at 6 p.m. wherever you get your 104.5 The Zone podcast. And then, of course, all next week, 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, talking Senior Bowl right here on 104.5 The Zone. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here. And do you know in the meantime?
Do I start it or do you start it?
In the meantime.
And in between time, peace.